Hey everybody, Scout Crafter here again. Today is Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a holiday celebrated by the United States to memorialize the people that died while serving in the U.S. military. The holiday started right after the Civil War, and it was called Decoration Day. And what it was people were meant to go out and decorate the graves of fallen soldiers. And in 1971, it became a federal holiday. So it's a big holiday here for me, for my family. And that's because the parade passes right in front of my house every year. So I was, ever since I was a kid, it was always something special. So we got a bit of a mosh today, Mishmash Monday, Memorial Day. It's Mishmash Memorial Day, Monday. And let's see what we can get doing today. Now, you remember Ben's beautiful saw set that he sent over to the channel? Well, my buddy Dan Semmel, who's my mentor, he sent me some information on these beautiful saw sets. My buddy Dan Semmel sent me this page when he saw the saw set that I was looking for. Look at all these awesome saw sets, these German saw sets. Look at the ornate designs of all of them. Just amazing when a tool maker really goes to the next level. Okay, next up, a good friend of the show, Mark McKenzie. You remember him. He's been in a few episodes. Mark was asking, he has some dake envy. He wants a dake in the worst way, He's putting together a really nice shop out there, Colorado, and now, he was asking about, is there any other way to straighten out a wrench or things like that, or what it presses, and, he thought it would be interest to the rest of us, and it is. And let's go through a couple things that you can do if you have a wrench that's bent and you don't have a dake or any kind of hydraulic press. Sometimes the first thing you'll read in a textbook is they tell you that a vise is not a press and shouldn't be used as such, but who hasn't used a vise to press something? I mean, it does have some force going that way, so it's acceptable, but you just don't want to crank down on it enough that you're going to damage anything. Now, if you look here, this is on this one. This is an older vise. Those are square threads, and they have a square profile. Now, some of the later ones and some of the newer ones have an Acme thread, and it's very close to a square thread, but it's smooth still, but still made for transferring load. Now, that shouldn't be confused with a V thread, and you can see the profile of this goes into a V. This type of thread is made for fastening. Now, you can use the vise as a light press if you had to. A couple things you have to remember. First of all, most important thing, you must lubricate the threads. Anytime you're going to use threads for any kind of lateral movement, other than like you're not going to use a nut or a bolt, you lubricate the threads. And what I like to use is my homebrew lubricant. I did a video on how to make this lubricant. It's 50% grease, 50% straight 30 motor oil. And you're going to grease, obviously, you're going to put this onto the threads, but you're also going to put it over here. This is another important part that a lot of people don't realize. This section here, where the yoke of the threaded rod, that also has a lot of pressure on it when you're using this as some kind of press. So you want to make sure you got enough lubricant in between here so that when it slides back and forth, that there's no friction here. So this has to be lubed and the threads have to be lubed. Next thing to remember once everything's lubed up is any kind of pressing you want to do, try and keep whatever you're pressing. Here we're going to press this stud into this hole. Try and keep that in line with the threads. You don't want to be off to the edge here. That will cock the vise to the side. So try and keep it directly in, over the threads, centered, and then you could easily use this to, here we are pressing this stud into that hole, into that piece of wood, just to show you, to demonstrate. And you can see here we press the stud all the way in, and if you had to do something like that, this is fine for doing that kind of press work. A couple things to remember: if you're going to put a wrench into the vise and do any kind of leverage, you want to make sure it's protected, that you don't put any mars or marks onto the bench, because you are putting a lot of force on here. So you can use 2 pieces of wood sandwiched in here, like soft jaws, or you could use something like an old inner tube from a bicycle. Leather works great. You cut up an old pair of shoes and take the leather and use that, wrap it around, but something that will grab it and won't slip, and that's a key not to marring up. So let's say we have a bend in a wrench like we do on this one here, and we want to straighten it out. Now, the first thing you have to remember is that a lot of people will be inclined to put this into the vise like this and try and straighten it this way by putting excessive force on here, thinking it's going to straighten it out. The problem is that, as we remember with the dake, in order to get this slight bend out, you have to spring it, because there's always going to be spring back. You have to bend it about the same distance this way, so when it springs back, it becomes straight. So if you put it in a vise, no matter how tight you make it, you'll never be able to get that bend out. So the best way to straighten a wrench out like this that has a slight bend in it is to determine where the bend starts. And you can see here, this bend, it's bowing a little bit to the left here. So what we would do is put it in here like this, tighten it down, and this is where you have to have your vise bolted tightly to the bench. Tighten it down good, and now you could bend the wrench this way so that that'll take that bend out. You can pull on the top this way, and that'll take this. Now sometimes you have to get a little creative in order to get leverage to bend that bar. Now here I have a crowbar, just a standard crowbar here. You can see this crowbar is clamped to the wrench, and I clamped it on the bottom here, and you can see that little gap at the bottom, but I put a clamp here, and now that'll give me the leverage when I pull back from up here. When I pull back, that will straighten out this little bend that's over here. So, and you can adjust that crowbar up and down so that depending on where the bend is, it'll give you better control. Okay, next up real quick, our buddy Ben Mall. He came across a wrench, a pipe wrench, and it had a bend to it, you know, like this. And one of his buddies says, oh no, that's the way it came. But to be honest with you, I've never seen a pipe wrench come with a pre-bent handle from the factory. And I have seen many a pipe wrench with a bend so perfect that it looked like it came from the factory. But the problem is that when obviously a lot of times we don't have a big enough wrench or we need more leverage, we slip a pipe over the end. It's common practice, and you know, it's called a cheater bar. You slip a pipe over the end, it gives you more leverage. The problem is if you're really pushing it, this will bend, and it'll bend this way. And because a pipe wrench works this way, you'll always see the bend going the same way that the wrench is supposed to work. You'll never see a bend going that way. It's always coming towards the inside of the wrench. So if you see that, it's been stressed. And the only way to tell, you just look down the wrench sideways. It should be straight as an arrow. And, you know, sometimes they taper up a little bit, but it should be pretty straight. And then you'll have a good lot of years left in your wrench. But once it's been bent like that, you can bend it back, but now it's been weakened a little bit because of the bending back and forth. Okay, Mishmash Memorial Day. We're over here at Elephant's Trunk Flea Market in lovely Connecticut. And a good friend of the show, Dean Collins, was nice enough about, oh, this goes way back to like March. He sent a couple t-shirts for, you can see here, Route 66. He's a volunteer. He does maintenance and detailing in the Route 66 Museum in Oklahoma. So Dean sent over these shirts for my girlfriend and I. Much appreciated, Dean. And also the tool we're going to be hitting later on. And here's what the back of the shirt looks like. Look at this beautiful record vise from England. We never see these here.
Well, I know. I was thinking that.
Now, look at this antique Hopalong Cassidy tricycle. Boy, if this thing could talk, can you imagine the stories it would tell? And look at these. Remember, these were called lawn darts. They're illegal to sell. They've been banned in the United States.
Hi, brother. Yeah.
Okay, along with the t-shirts, Dean was nice enough to send a couple tools. One of them was this Ford auto wrench, you could see here, from Buffalo, New York. And you don't see too many of these, again, but with the Ford markings and stuff. So a lot of the Ford guys really collect and like to collect these type of wrenches. You can see this one here had some work done to it. Obviously, it was cleaned up a little bit. this is dented here and dented here on both sides. You can see that's always a bit of a pain, and you can see the how deep these little markings, these knocks go in from being banged around and things like that. So, but maybe we could do something with it. Just a quick restoration for today for the Mosh Monday. So let's see what we can do. Okay, here we are with the pieces all apart, and let me tell you, this was a real job because this pin, see that pin is threaded on top. Now what's that supposed to happen is you're supposed to do this and screws in. It was stripped. So as you can see, what was happening is it was spinning in this hole, and then somebody peened it over so it wouldn't fall out. So it was really hard to get out. I mean, you know, it took upwards of, 35 minutes to get out here. So anyway, I'm going to fix that, but I'm going to go with the hand grinder on this one. I'm going to go with the angle grinder. I'm taking this down. Now, I don't have a lot of time, and I have to take off a lot of material, so I'm going to use the angle grinder. The problem is the angle grinder creates a lot of sparks. Anytime you use indoor, you should have this. It's called a fire blanket. And I like to hang it up next to the angle grinder so the sparks hit this and there's no worry about starting a fire. And this is made of a very fire resistant material, like a fiberglass. Okay, we have the part clamped into the vise, and you can see the fire blanket hanging here, so any sparks will hit the fire blanket. Okay, here's where we're at. Now, with the thumb ring, I wasn't too crazy about the way the original pin, not only was it stripped, but see, it was loose. A lot of play in there, so this had to go. So this is the pen I just made on the lathe. I used a 5/16 threaded rod, cut a slot in there, put it in the top here. Now you can see this fits, a lot less play, nice and smooth. That's the way it should be. Now, how it'll fit in here, you can see I put a thread into here. And how this works, we screw this in here, and what we'll do, when this bottoms out, it'll bottom out in the bottom here and the top, and that's a solid pin. Now, if everything works out right, it should look like this. See how that spins? And that should be really good on the wrench. Now, you know my favorite part. Remember what this wrench looked like before we started. And we're calling this wrench done. And you can see here, it came out nice, didn't it? I mean, we got everything. All those pits. I mean, it's smooth as silk. And I used that black enamel because that looks very similar to the Japanning that they did years ago. And was able to keep the lettering so you could see it here. See the Ford and now over here some of this was worn out, but this was McCaig Hatch Company, and they were out of Buffalo, New York, and their claim to fame was they used to make a lot of tools for tool kits for automobiles between like about the 30s and 50s for Ford and GM, things like that. And this was one of their tools, and you can see here it works just so smooth, you know. I mean, this is the way it's supposed to work. And I got all that pitting and notching out, left the top polished, and it was a lot of work on this wrench, but I think this would make any Ford owner proud to put this in their toolkit. So in closing, I want to say a special thanks to Dean for sending it over, and along with the shirts, and thank everybody for watching. I hope you have a nice Memorial Day. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Okay, just a quick congratulations. There were 5 people who got it right on that last video. It was said 32 times. Beautiful. So thanks very much for playing. Take care and have a good day.